Notice the following. This preferential you, this reference point, still feels that same joy, still feels that same unconditional love, still feels that same connection. However, perhaps is expressing it from the viewpoint, well, that's their story. Not invalidating, understanding that that fits as well, but it is not representative of the you say you prefer to be. But at the same time, you can understand that it serves a function for perhaps other individuals who are still exploring separation, limitation, and negativity. And they too have the right and reason to explore. But notice the lack of effect from that scenario. And in fact, the maintenance of the centered self, understanding that the serenity surrounds you as well from the back. Allow that you to once again turn facing the front of the road as we have defined and begin once again to walk. Perhaps again now into a fog, whereby there is no longer a discernible difference between one side and the other. As you walk, you come upon a chair. Allow yourself to sit in this chair. Again, with a permeation of fog around you. As you feel yourself sitting in this chair, as you see that you sitting in that chair, become that you in the chair. Now take your point of view and perhaps sit on the lap of that preferential you. But you will notice that you sink into that you and merge with that you. Allow your viewpoint to shift now from viewing that you to again sitting in the seat of that you and viewing from that you. Understand the following. You are that you. All in that sense that you would need you to represent it is simply to just decide that you are already that you. Just decide. A conscious act. The decision to become. Now that you are creating this notion within your imagination, understand that in order to do so, in order to even conjure up these pictures, you must, in the moment that you are doing so, become the idea itself. Otherwise, you would not have the ability to bring it forth. You are this you. By the mere feeling and conjuring of this you and experience of this you are that very you. Just decide that this is so for you. Now, in order to maintain this posture and point of view, once you have decided to change as you have, there are merely but two more steps. Step number 2, one being just decide, is to trust that you have changed. Assume the attitude and expectations of the you that has changed, not the you that wishes to change, that is looking for the evidence of why you have not. and accepting evidence that you have not. The you that is that you would accept no evidence. The accepting of the evidence that it is not that you is the old belief. The trust in the new you is the creation of the new belief that now looks from that point of view, that now acts as that you act. And in fact, that is step 3. To act as though you trust that you have changed. That means when something comes along, which would seem on the surface to say, you have not changed, understand that when you even interpret, I have not changed, that is not the new you trusting in the change. That is the old you seeing whether you really believe in the change. But you can simply reacclimate, reorient your consciousness to simply decide to trust in the change. Allow yourself now to understand that the chair in which you sit is the chair that you are sitting on in this room. And as the fog dissipates around, begin now to allow yourself to reacclimate to this room, for you have sat in the very chair that you are. Again, at your own pace, when reacclimating to your surroundings, you may open your eyes. Now, once again, understand, you have changed because you are a conscious creator and have simply chosen to change. The expression of your belief that you have changed is your willingness to trust in the change and act from the perspective of the change itself. You have created a model. You have created a mold or a template. What we again sometimes call the referential, since you can refer to it any time. Preferential, since you prefer it, you. And it can come in quite handy in your daily life as well. Now that you have given it the substance, now that you have called it forth. And very simply, if a situation comes along, it may not, but if it does, whereby you feel on some level that your initial reaction is that a reaction to a situation rather than a conscious action. Simply, first of all, note that you are perhaps thinking about proceeding by unpreferred, shall we say, perspective. See that perhaps you are about to do something that is not representative of who you say you wish to be. Then, in whatever way is possible under the circumstances, call forth the referential, preferential you. It now again has substance. It now again has mass. Hand the situation over to that you. The you that was standing in that particular way. The you that was holding themselves in that particular way. The you that when interacting with other individuals maintain that resolve. Maintain that joy. The you that when moving through the polarity of your particular physical reality, negative and positive, simply chooses the positive. Acknowledges the existence of the negative polarity because that is one of the definitions of the reality, but chooses the positive. Hand that situation over that you were about, in that sense, to perform that was not according to your preference, to the referential, preferential you. And see, with the specifics of whatever the situation is, what that you does. Very, very simple. When you do so, that you will surprise you very many times. Just as perhaps as we perform this particular set of actions, perhaps there were some nuances about that you had not anticipated. That is what your imagination contains as a tool. The ability to bring forth these specifics and apply them to a specific situation. With this tool, you no longer need anyone else's help. Now, this does not mean you cannot share, and this does not mean that from time to time you will, in that sense, enlist the assistance of other individuals. But you now have within you everything you need to proceed in any given situation if you will call forth and embody and empower that preferred you. At first, it may seem as a process. At first, it may seem that, well, my initial tendency is still the old approach. But the more times that you, rather than acting from the old perspective, call forth the preferential you, and hand that over, the more times you will give yourself the opportunity to see that there is always a positive choice. And it is always within you, obtainable by you at any time. If when you hand the situation over to that preferential you,
as they formed new primitive groupings, others, solving the problems, left your physical planet for other points in the physical universe. When they reached that level of development, however, they were spiritually and psychically mature and were able to utilize energies of which you now have no practical knowledge. Earth to them now is the legendary home. They formed new races and species that could no longer physically accommodate themselves to your atmospheric conditions. However, they also continued on the reincarnational level as long as they inhabited Phi's reality. Some of these have mutated and have long left the reincarnational cycle. However, those who have left it have evolved into the mental entities that they always were, you see. They have discarded material form. This group entities still takes a great interest in Earth. They lend it support and energy. In a way, they could be thought of now as Earth gods. On your planet they were involved in 3 particular civilizations long before the time of Atlantis, when, in fact, your planet itself in a somewhat different position, particularly in relationship to 3 of the other planets that you know. The poles were reversed. They were, incidentally, for 3 long periods of your planet's his. These civilizations were highly technological, the second one being, in fact, far superior to your own along those lines. Sound was utilized far more effectively, not only for healing and in wars, but also to power vehicles of locomotion, and to bring about the movement of physical matter. Sound was a conveyor of weight and mass. The strength of this second civilization lay mainly in the areas now known as Africa and Australia, although at that time not only was the climate entirely different, but the land areas. There was a different attraction of land mass having to do with the altered position of the poles. Relatively speaking, however, the civilization was concentrated in area. It did not attempt to expand. It was highly ingrown and dwelled upon the planet simultaneously with a large, unorganized, dispersed, primitive culture. Not only did it make no attempt to civilize the rest of the world, but it did everything in its power, which was considerable for a long period of time, to impede any such progress. The members of this civilization were largely a fringe group from the earlier successful civilization, most of whom had decided to continue existence in other areas of your physical universe. These, however, were particularly enamored of earthly life, and also thought that they could improve upon the last experiment in which they had been involved, though they were free to move on to other layers of existence. They were not interested in beginning from scratch again as an infant civilization, but in other areas. Therefore much of their knowledge was instinctive with them, and this particular group then went through what you would call the various technological stages very rapidly. They were particularly concerned in the beginning with developing a human being who would have built-in safeguards against violence. With them, the desire for peace was almost what you would call an instinct. There were changes in the physical mechanism. When the mind signaled strong aggression, the body would not react. Now psychologically you can see vestiges of this in certain individuals, who will faint or even attack their own physical system, before allowing themselves to do what they think of as violence to another. This civilization, therefore, left the natives that surrounded them in peace. They did send out members of their own group, however, to live with the natives and intermarry, hoping peacefully to thus alter the physiology of the species. The energy, often in your time given over to violence, went instead into other pursuits, but began to turn against them. They were not learning to deal with violence or aggression. They were attempting to short-circuit it physically, and this they found had complications. Energy must be allowed to flow freely through the physical system, controlled and directed mentally, or psychically if you prefer. The physical alteration was a strain on the entire system. The creative function and basis that has been distorted into the idea of aggression, the urge to act, was not understood. In a manner of speaking, breathing itself is a violence. The built-in inhibition resulted in a tied-up system of mutual controls in which the necessary thrusting out of action became literally impossible. An overly conscientious, restrictive mental and physical state evolved, in which the organism's natural physical need for survival was in every way hampered. Mentally, the civilization progressed. Its technology was extremely activated, and propelled onward as it strove to develop, for example, artificial foods so that it would not need to kill for survival in any way. At the same time it tried to leave the environment intact. It missed your stage of automobiles completely and steam-driven vehicles, and concentrated rather early on sound. The sound could not be heard by physical ears. The civilization was called Lumania, and the name itself went down in legend and was used again at a later time. The Lumanians were a very thin, weakly people, physically speaking, but psychically either brilliant or completely ungifted. In sum, you see, the built-in controls caused so many blockages of energy in all directions that even their naturally high telepathic abilities suffered. They formed energy fields around their own civilization. They were, therefore, isolated from contact with other groups. They did not allow technology to destroy them, however. More and more of them realized that the experiment was not a success. Some, after physical death, left to join those from the previous successful civilization, who had migrated to other planetary systems within the physical structure. Large groups, however, simply left their cities, destroyed the force fields that had enclosed them, and joined the many groups of relatively uncivilized peoples, mating with them and bearing children. These Lumanians died quickly, for they could not bear violence nor react to it violently. They felt, however, that their mutant children might have a resulting disinclination toward violence, but without the prohibiting nerve control reactions with which they were endowed. Physically, the civilization simply died out. Some few of the mutant children formed a small later group who traveled the area as itinerants in the following century, with large bands of animals. They cared for each other mutually, and many of the old legends concerning half-man and half-beast have come down through the ages simply from the memory of these old associations. These people, as remnants, really, of the first great civilization, always carried within themselves strong subconscious memories of their origin. I am speaking of the Lumanians now. This accounted for their quick rise, technologically speaking. But because their purpose was so single-minded, the avoidance of violence, rather, say, than the constructive peaceful development of creative potential, their experience was highly one-sided. They were driven by such a fear of violence that they dared not allow the physical system freedom even to express it. The vitality of the civilization was therefore weak, not because violence did not exist, but as they formed new primitive groupings. Others, solving the problems, left your physical planet for other points in the physical universe. When they reached that level of development, however, they were spiritually and psychically mature and were able to utilize energies of which you now have no practical knowledge. Earth to them now is the legendary home. They formed new races and species that could no longer physically accommodate themselves to your atmospheric conditions. But as they formed new primitive groupings, others, solving the problems, left your physical planet for other points in the physical universe. However, they also continued on the reincarnational level as long as they inhabited Phi's reality. Some of these have mutated and have long left to reincarnate as they formed new primitive groupings. international air cycle,